getting down to specifics of the different types of love and how to choose those types. Okay, the first type we're going to talk about is committable, sustainable love. This is the foundation of love in our life. It needs to apply to everything that we have a regular relationship with our life. That means our car, that means where we live, that means our job, and it especially means the person we're with, our lover, okay? Committable, sustainable love, the love of Venus. Venus is the one who knows everything about love, okay? And the very foundations of love are found in what makes love committable and what makes love sustainable. The answer is utility, usefulness, okay? Now, in this type of love, there's a lot going on. First of all, to have this love, you have to have a person that's useful to you in your life. If they're useful to you in a material, emotional, or spiritual way, you've got half, you've got part of the Venus picture. You've got 25% of it. Okay? Then you have to be useful to them. If you're useful to them, you have another 25% of the equation solved. So you've got two people who are useful to each other. Because they're useful to each other, it's sustainable. See, if someone's not useful to you, how can you sustain that? If you're not useful to them, how can they sustain that? For something to be useful, it has to be something to be sustainable, to be a Venus love. It has to be a two-way street. Got it? Of usefulness. All right? The Mars love has to be a two-way street too, but there's a big difference. Okay, that we'll get to when we discover that planet. So, when you look at your relationships, is this committable? Is this sustainable? Is it useful both ways? Am I useful to them, and are they useful to me? If one of those is a no, this is not committable love. Okay, this is not committable because it's not sustainable, and if you try to do it, you will fail. And no matter how much you fight, and no matter how much you struggle, and no matter how much you try to move forward, you will fail if this isn't there. Because by definition, we cannot sustain something that's not useful, and something cannot sustain us if we're not useful. Look at we have this word, unsustainable agriculture. It's the plague of this world, where we have agricultural practices of raping the earth for our nutrition and not being useful to the earth in return, taking from the animals to feed our bellies and not being useful to the animals in return. That's not sustainable. The result of that is going to be a major food shortage, and people will be starving all over. It's inevitable. Don't need to predict that with astrology. You can just do that as a logistical prediction. 99.9% accurate prediction right there. Because it's not sustainable. If you did that for 10 years, okay, that's fine. That's not a sustainable, doesn't have to be sustainable for 10 years. Because in an emergency, you might have to go rape the land, you know? That's not Venus love, though. Sustainable love is Venus love. It's just a matter of time. If we keep doing it, it's all over. Okay? Yet, we do that to eat. The majority of the world does that to eat. So it's no surprise that the majority of the world has an unsustainable relationship with their partners too, where they're not useful to each other. So how can it be sustained? So, is your partner useful to you? Should I go with A, B, or C? Am I useful to A? Am I useful to B? Am I useful to C? Is A useful to me? Is B useful to me? Is C useful to me? That's how you find your answer. It's that simple. Okay? I can get this job, or this job. I'm going to have to go to that job for a long, long time. Is that job useful to me? I can only go to that job for a long time, commit to that job if it's useful to me. That job can only keep me if I'm useful to it. So, am I useful to it? There's love. Is it useful to me? There's love. Okay? First, that's the question we have to ask ourselves in everything. Is there a two-way street of usefulness? If so, it's possibly sustainable. That's 50% of the equation. It's possibly sustainable. The other thing that makes something sustainable is it feels good. We can't be in a state of pain and agony and sustain it forever. We can sustain a state of pain and agony for a while. We can hustle that job because it's going to get us to the job we want for a little while. We can suffer that bad relationship because it's going to it's going to teach us what we need to know, so it's useful, but we can't live in it. We can't stay there forever. You know? That's not Venus love. For something to be sustainable, it has to feel good. Okay? So a sustainable diet is a diet that is useful and it's yummy. Yeah, for a few months you can eat that nasty, bitter medicine stuff so you don't die. But after that emergency is done, if you keep eating that the rest of your life, you'd rather starve to death. It's not sustainable. Okay, so the love of Venus is useful and it feels good. That's why we want it, you know? Not because it's just useful. We are craving it because it's useful. That's why it's important. But we're craving it because it feels so damn good. Okay? It has to be useful. It has to feel good to both people. One person says, I feel so loved. Other person goes, I'm not really feeling loved. Well, that's not Venus love. It's not sustainable. So you can't commit to that love. Okay? So you have to see if these four things are there. I'm useful to that or that person is useful to me, and it actually feels good. I could keep this job forever. I go to work, I'm useful, it's useful to me, and it actually feels good to be there, and people at work like me to be there. It feels good for them when I come in. When I come in, people smile. When I see Bob, I smile. When I see my boss, I'm like, hey boss, I'm happy to see my boss. It feels good and it's useful. Those are the only things we can sustain. Don't commit to anything else. If you commit to something else, you're going to have a huge portion of your life that's not love. That's misery and pain. Okay? Now, to have Venus love requires this thing called the sun. And that means it requires you to be yourself. The sun is who you really are. It's your true self. A job might be useful to you and pay you your bills, but if it doesn't reflect your true self, it'll never feel good going to work. You know? You won't feel good to the people at work when you go there and you're not being yourself. It's not sustainable. We can't have sustainable, committed love unless it's based on who we really are. Okay? Who we really are gives us this thing that's hugely important. It gives us this thing called personal value. It gives us something that's worth having. If we're going to be useful to someone in a sustainable way, we only can be useful to them as ourselves. Okay? We can't be useful for someone in a sustainable way as something we're not. Like take me, for instance. Okay? I'm an astrologer. That's my identity. I read a line in a book one day, and it says something about an astrologer, and this little voice went off in my head that recognized and said, that's you. You're an astrologer. Okay? Being an astrologer gives me value. It means I have something that I can offer consistently. I was an astrologer 30 years ago. I'm still an astrologer. 31 years ago, I was doing martial arts. I'm not doing martial arts anymore. Yes, if you need someone to beat someone up who's giving you trouble, if I'm walking down the street and someone's trying to rape you, yes, I can get in there. I can kick their ass. I can be useful to you in that moment. But I'm not going to be teaching martial arts class because that's not who I really am. So that's not sustainable. Me being an action hero is not sustainable. Me being an astrologer is, because I'm an astrologer, not a martial artist. Okay? So, again, we are many things, but what we really are, that's what we can, only those things can we sustain. That's the only good thing about ourselves, is our sun. It's who we really are. That's the one good thing. The beautiful thing about life is, we only need that one good thing. We need to find our sun and say, who am I? And be that thing. And when we are that thing, when we recognize that, and we start becoming that thing, and we grow into that thing more and more, our value increases. Our personal value increases. We have more to offer ourselves. Everything I offer to myself, I've been able to offer myself largely because I'm an astrologer. We have more to offer other people. What about the rest of our life? It don't matter. Wow, if you guys saw the rest of my life, if you saw my garage, if you saw what was underneath my bottom where I'm sitting here, if you took a look under here, you'd be going, oh my God, I can't believe I listened to Ernst. I don't know why I'm watching his videos. But you're watching my videos for one reason and one reason only. And that's because I'm an astrologer. Okay, you're not watching my videos because what's in here. If I showed you what's in here, you wouldn't watch my videos. But you know who would? Somebody else. Okay? Someone else would love to watch what's in here. All right? So, the point I'm making is, we only need one thing that's a good thing, and that good thing is who we really are, as our bare bones, what we really are. Our very core, what is that? Living that is what gives us the foundation to have a Venusian love. Because that gives us the value to go, yes, I have something to offer that's beautiful, that's useful to you. I have my intelligence of this. I have the money I gained from my intelligence. I have my speed that got me this. I have this which I can give to you. And it felt good while I was doing it because it was being me. Nothing feels good when it's not being us. There's nothing you can do in this world that feels good unless it's who you are. Okay? So to be sustainable, it has to feel good. It has to be who you are, the sun. To be worthwhile, you have to have something to offer. There's only one thing anybody can offer this world, and that's who they really are. So if you don't know who you are, you can't have sustainable love. It's impossible for you. You cannot get it. You will not have it. You can wish for it, you can cry for it, you can try for it, you can gamble for it, you can struggle for it, you can fight for it, and you will not have it. Because to have it, you have to be yourself. And when you're yourself, you'll see who you can be most useful to. You want the most love in the world? You need to be with the person you're most useful to. You want the most love in the world? You need a person who's most useful to you. How do you know who that person is? If you haven't recognized yourself, if you don't know who you are, you can't know. So if you don't know these things about yourself, you need to do something really hard. It's not as hard as those far hard things, but it's still not easy. You acknowledge that, wow, I don't know who I am, and I can't make up for, a relationship won't make up for that. I have to not focus on love right now. I have to focus on who I am. Now, the sun matures at 21. Okay? That's when we have a big opportunity to recognize who we are. That's when the kid goes, no, I'm not going to go to school to be a doctor, Dad. And Dad says, get the hell out of the house. Then you go live on the streets. And, when you realize you want to be a doctor because you don't like to starve, come back. 10 years later, the kid's an artist. That happens sometimes. Or maybe you have a nice son. You don't have to go through a conflict. But you just go, yeah, this is me, and you start doing it. We have a big opportunity at 21 when the son matures to say, oh, this is who I am. Right around 21-ish. It can extend into 22. Me at 22, I'm an astrologer. Okay? At 21, an astrologer looked at my chart, invited me to their house. I thought, oh, they're going to read my chart some more. They sat me down, taught me how to calculate a horoscope, gave me books for calculating a horoscope, kicked me out of the house without saying a single thing about my chart. So they knew when my son was maturing that I was an astrologer, but I didn't know for another year. It's kind of funny sometimes. And they didn't tell me I was. They just taught me how to calculate a chart. So there's a good opportunity there. The reason I'm pointing that out is that Venus, our capacity to make long-term commitments, matures at 25, 4 years later. So there's a natural order to things. First, we find out who we are, and then we can find out what we can commit to. If we try to commit to something first without knowing who we are and know what we have what's called a lost commitment. A commitment in which you will be lost. A commitment that is like going into the opium dens of China and smoking opium all your life. You've committed to walk into a den of being lost. So you need to realize, without knowing who you are, you can't make a sustainable commitment. You can make unsustainable commitments, and you have. You've had roller coasters. You've had a 2-year stint, 2 year with another person, 2 year with another person. But you haven't had a committed working relationships, and you won't. There's no skipping the foundations. You can't skip the foundation of a committed relationship and try to have it without knowing who you are and living that thing to some degree. You don't have to live it fully. You have to be moving in that direction though. So when you meet someone, are they doing what's them? If not, they have nothing to offer you, and if they just don't. And then the girl says, oh, but he's so cute. I don't care if he's cute. Is he on track with who he is? That's what he needs to be. He's not a pet. You want a pet, or do you want a husband, right? Pets are not going to help you. They're cute. Oh, pets are cute. Sometimes we want to go play with our pets, right? But in a sustainable love relationship, we don't need a pet. We need a man, or we need a woman. Or a man needed a man, or a woman needed a woman. We need, by definition, one of my definitions of a man and a woman, when someone's a man, he knows what he's about. He knows who he is. When someone's a woman, she exudes that in what she knows she is. She knows what she stands on. There's a power to being a man and a woman. And without that, how can you be man and wife? How can you be man and wife together if you're not that alone? So, if you don't have this, you can't skip. You got to get this foundation. And then you'll be useful the way that's truly you. You can be useful in a way that's not you, but it's not going to feel good. So it's not love. You see? A lot of people are useful in relationships as something far removed perhaps from what they are. Maybe something close to what they are. But unless it's what they actually are, it's not sustainable. It's like, let's just use a really simple example. Say you have a person, they don't know what they're useful as. They don't know who they are. So they decide, oh, I can do this. This is nice. I can be useful on a material level and rub my lover's back. So they rub their back. And their lover goes, oh, that's nice. That felt really good. Thank you. They thank you because it's useful. Okay? But if you're a massage therapist, or better yet, a sexy Thai massage therapist who walks on your back, I'm just having fun here. But if this is really your passion, your life, who you are, you're a person who massages, then your husband's going to have a much deeper experience of massage when you massage his back. Okay? Which means you're going to be way more useful to him. So see, anything we do that's not truly us, even though we can be useful in ways that are not truly us, they're not sustainable because they're not the best possible thing. It's not the best thing. So why would somebody sustain something that's not the best? They're going to want the best, right? If you have a guy that says, why do you want to get married? He goes, well, I want to get married because I want to get lots of free massages. Okay, let's say a guy says that. That's his whole reason for getting married. Massages is the most useful thing to me. And so the little girl goes, well, I think I can rub your back. I can give massages. You know, I saw somebody do it on TV once. So I'll do it. And of course she can't do it well. So eventually the guy's sleeping around with his massage therapist, having an affair with his massage therapist. Because he wasn't getting something that was coming from the self. So it wasn't there with all the creativity. It wasn't there with all the intuition. It wasn't there with all the wisdom that only comes from doing things when we show up doing the things that are truly us. Okay? It wasn't the most valuable thing we had to offer. When people love us, they want the most valuable thing we have to offer from us. You know, love is so much based on, I love you because the most valuable thing you have is what is so important to me. It's not, yeah, this 10th most important thing to you is what's most important to me. That's not sustainable. It's because really, it's all based on knowing what we have to offer because we are ourselves. When we're being ourselves, then we always have something to offer. There's no chance of not having something to offer when you live as yourselves. Sadly, it often feels like it. Why? Because every time we tried to be ourselves as a kid, we were shot down. And so we have no faith in being ourselves. So instead we'll be something else and try to sell that on the table of love and get nothing. Get not sustainable committed love, but at best a roller coaster. Okay? And at worst, nothing. Although nothing is better than a roller coaster, because in nothing, you have all the time in the world you need to develop yourself. Okay? Without recognizing our true self, we don't feel like we have anything to offer. Venus is where we say, I'm worth this. I have this to offer another person. Where does it come from? It comes from living as myself. But Venus forgets that. Venus just says, I've got this. Great. Venus knows what he has in his bank to trade with. Okay, because relationships are a trade. I'm useful, you're useful. It's a trade. And Venus knows what he has to offer. What if Venus doesn't know what he has to offer? What can he do? I don't feel like I have anything to offer you. I feel like you're too good for me. I have nothing to offer you. What would you want from me? People say those things to the people who are trying to love them. Part of having a committable, sustainable relationship is knowing, wow, I have something of beauty to offer. I have something useful to offer. I have something valuable. I have a commodity. I've got this body. It's a commodity. It can do things that are useful. I have this heart that's a commodity. It can do things that are useful. I have this mind that's a commodity. It can do useful things. When a person feels that, they know they can have a good relationship because they have something to trade. They have something to offer. What happens to the person who doesn't feel that? It's real simple. They have one option and one option only. It's shown by Aries and Libra. Libra is the sign of sustainable Venusian relationships. I trade a value for something of value. It's sustainable. Aries is, Jamie tells us, Aries is rats and cats. The cat takes the rat. Yuck. I mean, who wants to eat a rat? It's like hardly any meat on the thing. mostly fur. The reason cats are choking up fur balls, right? It's not like a scrumptious meal. The reason cats let people put bonnets on them and take photos, because they'd rather eat cat food in a can than a rat. Because rats, it's like they're taking what they can get. So if a person doesn't have doesn't recognize their commodities, the value they have, and everyone has value, but if a person doesn't recognize it, they feel like they have nothing to offer, and then their only option is, I'll take what I can get. I've seen people say this. Oh, yeah, I had a string of 10 bad relationships, but I take what I can get. It's like, really? And then when they're in their relationships, they do that. They take what they can get while the getting's good, because they know it's not sustainable, because they don't feel they have anything to offer. So it's take while I can. Because I feel I have nothing to offer. I know this isn't sustainable. I better take what I can. That's what's happening in the back recesses of their mind, usually without them even being aware of it. So to have this committed love, we have to recognize our value, that we have value. We have something that people want. Everyone has a body, a heart, and a mind that has things that can offer things that somebody somewhere wants. Okay? Someone's shopping for your body, for your heart, and your mind. If it's your body, if it's your heart, if it's your mind, if it's your son. If it's not, if it's someone else's body, someone else's heart, or a closed heart, or a closed body, or a closed mind, no one's looking for that. Okay? It has to be yours. If they want somebody else's, they'll go find the person who has that, who is that. Okay? So, it's very simple. In every sustainable relationship, work, car, like take car. A car is a commitment. You're going to have that car for a long time. Okay? Do I enjoy being in the car? Or every time I sit in the seat, I'm so scrunched up, I can hardly walk when I get out of the car. Does it feel good to be in the car? Do I feel safe in the car where I can see where I'm going? Or when I put my seat where I can reach the steering wheel, there's this big pillar right in the way, and I almost ran over 3 old ladies last week because I didn't see them in the crosswalk, And it was so stressful because of this damn pillar. It doesn't feel good to be in this car. Car has to feel good. It has to be useful to you. It has to get you where you're going. Where are you going? I don't know. Don't buy a car when you don't know where you're going. Buy a car when you know where you're going. I'm going to drive in the snow and mud. Well then, you need this 4-wheel drive. Oh, I just live in the city and I love getting into the open, windy roads and opening it up. Oh, you need a Porsche. Okay? Don't be like me and drive a sports car in Montana in the winter. That's what I used to do. Can't tell the amount of times people used to push me out of snowdrifts. So anyway, we have to, what was the point I was making? We have to know what we want to do before we know what's useful to us, before we know what to commit to. So with the car, we decide what car is useful to us. After we buy the car, we have to be useful to the car. We have to fill gas into the car. That's useful to the car. It lets it be itself, which is to zip down the road. If you're not useful and you don't put gas in the car is not going to be able to be itself. At that point, you don't have a sustainable relationship with your car. You sit on the side of the road, stranded. If you don't take your car in and get the maintenance done. If you don't clean your windshield. If you're not useful to your car, it's not sustainable. That car is going to let you down one day. Same with your partner. Okay? It's the very same thing. In every commitment, we have to ask ourselves, is it useful to me? Am I useful to it? And does it feel good? Because if you're useful to that car and it gets you where you need to go and your back hurts every time you get out of it, it's not love. Because it's not Venus love. Sure, it's a different kind of love. It's a Mars love. You can use that car to get somewhere in an emergency, but you can't drive to work in that car every single day, or else you're going to ruin your back. So it has to feel good. The car you choose as your car has to feel good. Same with your job. Feel good, be useful. It's useful to you and it feels good for you to be there. Where you live. Is where you live useful to who you are? See, everything that's useful is only useful because of who you are. The sun. When you don't know what you're going to use your car with, how are you going to make a good choice? If you don't know who you are, how do you know what partner to pick? You can't possibly know it. There's no way in hell you can know it. Then you're going to be running on autopilot love. Autopilot love is the sick, treacherous beast that lurks within your subconsciousness, that causes you to choose relationships, to choose lovers, to choose partners that are going to hurt you in the very same way you've always been hurt before. And you chose it. You chose that. Okay? But you don't want to. That's why we're having this course. You want to choose sustainable, committable love. And you can only do that if you know who you are. Okay? A lot of people need to go back to square one with this type of love and start base it on who they are. Okay? Because it might be useful, but if it's not useful to who they really are, it's not useful to them. It might feel good. Love feels great. But without recognizing who we are, how's that love going to, how are we going to choose love that's useful for us? And then we grow into something we're not. And in life, when we grow into something we're not, there's never a happy ending to that. The end of that is anger, bitter, and frustration. That's what we're left with. If we can grow into the most beautiful something we're not, we can grow into a world-acclaimed something we're not, and then people kill themselves. Why do world-acclaimed people kill themselves? It's one of the reasons, Oh, they're so amazing, they shot themselves, I can't believe it. Because they don't have love in their lives. Okay? That's why. So, it's hard for people. See, people think love is the answer. And say, as soon as I have love, I'll know who I am. No, it doesn't work that way. Sun first leads to Venus. Okay? Sun is the foundation of Venus. Of our Venusian commitments. We only commit to things that are based on who we are. Then we know what we have something true to offer. Something to offer that's really us with our full creativity and wisdom and presence. We can't give something with our full presence of something that's not us. We'll be doing it half-assed. Just sort of there. And then you have a sort of there relationship, which nobody wants. Okay? So that's the first type of love, the love of Venus. It's the most important part because it's the love you commit to. So you look at your life and say, okay, in my job, do I have committable love? Does it feel good? Is it useful to me? And am I feeling good to it? And am I useful to it? If so, you can keep that job as long as you love it. As long as it meets that criteria. As long as it's a daily act of love. Same with where you live. Are you in an area useful to you? Does it feel good to be there? If not, it's not love. And you need to find a way to leave. To go to a place that is love. That feels good and is useful. I have a friend. This area has been very useful to her. But they hate the climate. The climate hurts them every single day. It's not love. Okay, it's not committable, sustainable love. There is some love there because it is useful. And that's a different type of love. Committable, sustainable, Venusian love is the most important love in our lives. And again, the most important aspect of that love is our lover. Okay? Are they useful? Are we useful? We just have to ask ourselves, analyze all your relationships from day one. Your first boyfriend or girlfriend, your second, your third. The one you go, I'm so heartbroken over, and I'm still crying 10 years later or whatever. Analyze those especially and say, was the person useful to me to who I really was? Was I useful to the person to who they really were? Did it feel good for me? Did it feel good for them? Then if it was, then it really was love. And you would have kept it. And since you don't have it, one of those was missing. That's why it wasn't committable. That's why it wasn't sustainable. When one of those four things is missing, it's not sustainable. Okay? And we need those four things on a material and emotional level for sure. If we have it on a spiritual level as well, so much the better. See, when we have a relationship with someone on a material level, and I'm going to get into all this later, but I'm just going to touch on it now. If you have I'm useful to you on a material level, you're useful to me on a material level, and it feels good when we do material things, you have a materially useful relationship. I call that relationship friendship. Okay? And that's the foundation. You want this in all your relationships. All right? Okay. Then you have the emotional level. I'm useful to you emotionally. You're useful to me emotionally. And it emotionally feels good. When you have that, you have what I call lovers. Okay? If you're bringing light and love into this world as a natural part of yourself, not to make up for being an idiot like your dad said you are, but if you're bringing love and light into the world because it's who you are, if you want to be a mother or a father, not to make up for the fact that your parents screwed up and you want to do it right, but because having a mother or father is who you are and you want to bring the light and love into this world as a child, and you have a partner that's useful to you in bringing light and love into this world, then you have what's called a soulmate. Okay? So we have three possible relationships with people based on what levels we're experiencing, what levels they're useful to us. Without this, we can't have this. Without these two, we won't have this one. 1, 2, 3. Friendship, lovers, soulmate. Most people, honestly, will be doing great if they can just get to this. That's pretty damn good. You only can do these if you're useful in that area. If you're useful materially, you can have a committable relationship on a material level. If you're useful emotionally, you can have a committed, sustainable relationship on an emotional level. If you're useful on a spiritual level, if you can bring love and light into this world, you can have a committed, sustainable relationship on the level of spirit, on the level of soulmate. But if you're not useful in any one of these things, you can't have a relationship with any of those things. Because a relationship means you have something. If you're not materially useful, you can't have a material relationship with anybody. If you're emotionally useless, you can't. If you're spiritually useless, you can't. Okay? We'll talk about that a lot more. So you see, to have the love you want requires you to be yourself. Inherently, we're all useful materially. There's something about each of us that's useful materially. There's something about each of us that's useful emotionally. There's something about each of us that's useful spiritually. And they all come from being ourselves. If any one of these is missing in your life, it's not a big deal. You're not cursed. You just haven't recognized yourself. All you have to do is recognize yourself. As soon as you do that, boom, 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 you have these. Without recognizing yourself, oh, these are going to be hard. You know? You won't have them fully. You can have them partially, like half-assed. Like, if you don't recognize who you are, so you don't know what you're really here to do, so you do something else, you'll be useful in that thing, but you won't be like awesomely useful, you know? You'll just be like, yeah, they can do the job. You want your lover, your boss to say that, oh yeah, they can do their job. They want to say, oh, you're here. That's what you want. You're finally here, I need you. That's what you want to hear, right? That feels good, you know? And we only get that if we're living as ourselves, okay? And then we have it. We have it. The only reason you don't have it is not because you're cursed, not because you're an idiot, because you're not living as yourselves. And if you are an idiot, if you are stupid, if you don't have a high intelligence, you know what? That's part of the gift of who you are, because you don't have a certain kind of intelligence is going to make you do something better in something else. So don't get frustrated about what you're not. Don't look at what you're not. I was playing chess with my son the other day. He's been beating me a lot. He takes forever to play. He just thinks it through and he thinks. I'm like, zip, zip, zip. That's how I play. And he's like thinking it through. So of course he beats me. So I said, let's play speed chess. Let's set the timer to 8 minutes each. And we each have 8 minutes to finish the game. And we played, and I beat him. I knew that was the only chance I had to beat him, right? And I beat him. And I said, what's really cool about this, I said, now we know that when there's time to do a good job with something, you do it. When there's not time to do a good job, when there's only enough time to do a bad job, I'll do it because I can do a better bad job than you. So you see, we have different brains. Our brains work in different ways. And it's easy to get frustrated. I'm frustrated. Gosh, I can't beat him. I don't take the time to think it through. I can't see as many moves ahead as he can. I'm so frustrated with myself. I can do that. And he can say, gosh, my dad just tore me up in this speed chess. I just didn't have any time to think. And he was thinking so fast and mowed me over. There's something wrong with my brain. That's one way to look at it. The other way to look at it is, because your brain takes its time, wow, can you do a thorough job? And my brain, because it doesn't take its time, when there's an emergency, when there's no time to think or act, and I work on my instincts and jump on things with my instincts, wow, I can do pretty damn good. They're different gifts. We each need to find our gift instead of finding what's not our gift and thinking something's wrong with us. There's that saying, it's attributed to Einstein, but it wasn't said by Einstein. If you tell a fish to climb a tree, he'll feel like a failure his whole life. And that's what happens. That's effectively why people don't know who they are. Because they've been told they're fish and that they need to climb a tree. Or they've been told they need to climb a tree when they're a fish. They didn't have the experience to discover what they really are, what works. And so they're so focused on what they're not, so focused on feeling bad about themselves. But none of that's real. That's not who you are. The sun is the bright thing, not who we are. It doesn't matter what's under my bench. It doesn't matter what's in my garage. It doesn't even matter what's in here. You really want to go to scary places. What matters is I'm an astrologer. That's the only reason I have value. When people say, oh, you're this and this, it must be amazing to be around you. I'm like, nope, it's not. It's great as an astrologer, but that's the end. And that's enough. All these other things, I don't get bothered by what's under here. They're just a joke. They're just part of being human. What matters is our sons. So we need to realize the importance of that. And it's a huge step that many people need to take before they have a relationship. And it's one step. It's not an incredible journey. It's one step of finding out what that is. And you instantly have value then. You don't need to do it for 20, 30 years. When I became an astrologer, I instantly had value. People instantly wanted me. It's like I'm reading one book and it's like, wow, I just started studying and people recognize me for that value. It was really like that. Literally like that, where I had just started studying astrology and a month later, so I just read a couple books. I hardly knew anything, I met a world champion athlete who wanted nothing to do with anyone. The athlete who would go to the race, win the race, disappear, wouldn't even go to the celebration dinners, just had no friends, was a total loner. Everyone wanted to know this athlete because they're the best. They're the best in their field as a female athlete. She was also the most attractive athlete in her gender. So everyone wants to know that girl. Every guy. No one got to. No one got to know her. And I became like her deep friend for many, many years. You know why? Because even though I just studied astrology for a couple of weeks, she asked me the famous last question. Do you know anything about astrology? And I didn't know anything about astrology. I've been studying for 2 weeks. How much can I know? It didn't matter. Because I was an astrologer, I had something of value to offer her. And she didn't want me to be in the room with me until she found out that I was an astrologer. Okay? So We just have to find that thing. The minute you find it, you're home free. And it's just going to get better. It's not like, I didn't have anything to offer as an astrologer for 30 years. Right away, somehow, because I'm an astrologer, I had something to offer. I would find something. I don't know where it would come from. It would just show up. And I go, oh, that's cool. I like that. Sounds true. Let me say it. And they're like, oh, that changed my life. I'm like, cool. Okay? So this is not an incredible journey to discover your sun. It's one step. When you make that step and you recognize it, you feel it in your bones, because the sun is your bones, it's your skeletal system, it's the core of everything you look like is based on your skeletal structure. It's that core. After that, you'll be able to make these choices that are useful to me. Without that, you can't even decide, is this person useful to me? You need to acknowledge that. I don't know if this person's useful to me because I don't know who I am. Does it feel good? It feels good. Okay, good. Are you going to live for what feels good? Or are you going to live to be yourself? Living to be yourself gives joy and happiness. Living to feel good, when it's not based on being yourself, it's just going to lead to that same dead end. It's going to lead to a miserable end of life. You can't afford to do it. Don't commit to that. Don't commit to that person. Don't commit to that relationship. Why? It's not love. We have to only commit to what's love in our life. We can't commit to a job. We can't commit to a person if we don't know who we are. Because then how do we know if it's good for us? How do we know if it's right for us? How do we know if it's useful to us? How do we know if we're going to be useful to it? How do we know if it even feels good? If we're not there as ourselves, we can't know. So that's a really hard step that a lot of you all are going to have to make, recognizing that I don't know who I am enough to even know to answer this question of, is this useful to me? You can answer the question, does it feel good? That's easy. And a lot of you might say, yeah, I'll just have a life that feels good. Yeah, well, that's not a life worth living. And everyone knows it. So don't fall into that trap and thinking that feeling good will get you through life. It'll get you through the moment. It'll get you through the day. But wow, it leaves its toll on life. Okay, it's no different than saying, oh, but it feels good to stick this needle in my arm. It feels good to take this pill. It feels good to take this puff. Yeah, it feels good too. But is it useful to you? Usefulness means it moves us forward with who we are. It lets us be more of who we are. It validates who we are. It makes us feel good about who we are. It gives us a foundation for being who we are. Ultimately, it's all, what's useful is what augments what we are. Because ultimately we want to get to a point of extreme fulfillment. What's the point of extreme fulfillment? That's the point where you can give the love of Jupiter. That's the billionaire who has so much money. He can give $1 million to 500 people. And you know what? And his lifestyle won't change at all. Wouldn't it be nice to have that level of fulfillment? Materially, emotionally, and spiritually? You can't really have it materially. There's not enough cash in the world for everyone to have $1 billion, I think there's enough cash for everyone to have 5 million, I think. Which is pretty damn good, okay? But you can have it emotionally. And you can have it spiritually, because those are realms that aren't limited by the physical realities of living on a planet with only so many resources, okay? Those are realms that have endless resources. So we all can become emotional billionaires. We all can become spiritual billionaires. But only if we have the commitments in our life that are based on love. And love is based on who we are. Because without knowing who we are, we don't know if something's good for us. We only know through our senses and through our ears what feels good, what sounds good, what validates us, makes us feel good. But that's not useful. Feeling good's not useful. Feeling good just lets us stay somewhere useful. That's all. Okay? All right, that is the Venus love. It's the foundation. And there might be times in your life where you have none of that. Okay? Raise your hand if you had none of that in any area. You didn't have a place of love that you were committed to living. You didn't have a job you were committed to living. You didn't have a person you were committed to living. Wunderbar. I didn't have a job. I was living in a swimming pool. It had a roof, but it was basically, my friend called it a swimming pool. It was a moist basement apartment painted blue, the color of the bottom of a swimming pool. I didn't have love in my life. I didn't have a person in my life. I didn't have money. I didn't have a job. I had no love in my life. My life was in a complete emergency state. And that's when I became an astrologer. So who cares if your life's in an emergency state? This is the perfect time. You have no committable love in your life. You know what that means? It means absolute freedom to find out who you are. One of the funny things about the sun is it's debilitated in Libra, the sign of Venus. Which means once we make committable relationships, who we are gets limited. It's kind of like this little warm, little loving prison, to the sun. To what the capacity of the sun, the soul is, the best committable relationship is like pretty lame, So when you have no committable relationships, you're not committed to work, you don't have a working job, you don't have a working love, you don't have a working residence, perfect. Because at that moment, that's the time in your life where you have more freedom to discover yourself than you're ever gonna have. And that's why when I had that, I literally didn't eat for 3 weeks that month. I picked wood sorrels off the side of the road when I hiked down to the temple to get my food. And then I had $2, so I bought a stack of corn tortillas this high, and I rolled my wood sorrels in the corn tortillas and ate them. And they were really good, because wood sorrels have a lot of vitamin C. And that's the month I became an astrologer. I had nothing limiting who I was. And I was heartbroken. I'd gotten kicked out of my girlfriend's apartment, who was completely not useful to me. She wasn't useful materially. She kicked me out. She didn't put out either. She wasn't useful. She didn't feel good. And I was heartbroken. And I was given absolute freedom to decide who I was, to find out who I was. A few months later, she called me and she said, I have this big 2-bedroom apartment, and it's expensive. They keep junking the rates up. It's a very expensive part of LA, in West Hollywood. And I could really use a roommate. And you're just so capable, and you're capable of doing so many things. You're just so useful. It'd be great if you would be my roommate. And she goes, and I found you a job. I know you're really good with iridology, which is studying the iris of the eye to make diagnostics and treatments. And I loved iridology a year ago when she threw me out of her apartment. And I only was there a week. Like, I moved there. I didn't last a week before I was canned, into the swimming pool. And it was like, she called me months later and says, I got you this job, and it was over 3 times the amount I was getting paid at my bike shop job. It would have been a fantastic paying job. And she goes, I got you a job at this clinic doing that. I told them about you. I told them how good you were. They totally need one. They're ready to hire you. And I just said, I'm studying astrology now. And I know that you're not a fan of astrology. And so I don't really want to be living with someone who's against what I'm working on, what I'm focusing on. Mm-hmm. So you see, that was a choice of love. I was heartbroken over that girl for 7 years. But none of that was love. None of that heartbreak was love. Love was me saying, I'm an astrologer. I can't be an astrologer living with someone who's antagonistical against that. That doesn't feel good. That doesn't support me in being an astrologer. Even though I'd love to have the $25 an hour job instead of this $7 an hour job. But I thought it's more useful to me to keep the $7 an hour job, even though it's hardly useful to me, while I develop and learn what I need to practice as an astrologer. And so that's the choice I made. It wasn't a choice of heartache. 6 years later, it took me 6 more years to get over that girl. That's how heartbroken I was with that girl. But that heartbreak has nothing to do with love. Love was, I'm an astrologer. You're not useful to me. If I hadn't been an astrologer, I would have said, oh good, let's go get that job as an iridologist. And I would have done something that wasn't fully me. And I would have done something that wouldn't have given me great value in my life. Wouldn't have given me anything to offer others of true value. I'd just be a mediocre iridologist, you know. And I wouldn't have got engaged by engaged I mean involved in another horrible episode of not love with the person. So these foundations are it's the anchor, who we are. Recognizing who we are is the anchor for us to make the decisions when someone shows up and says, I had a relationship choice, I had a residence choice, I had a job choice, I had 3 commitments handed to me, 3 options at once. And I said, I'm an astrologer. None of these commitments help me with astrology. So I'm not going to take them. They won't be useful to me. Okay? Yes, I'll be useful as an astrologer, as an iridologist. I'll be useful as your roommate. Girl needs her vacuum fixed every week. You know? I'll be useful in this and this and this. But none of that's useful to me. So it's not love. I can't commit to it. Okay? I did go down and watch her cats for 3 days. You know? It wasn't a long-term commitment. Yeah, I could be useful for you for 3 days because your crazy cats only like me. You know, I can be useful that way. So, but that's not a committable thing. I can't go live with her and take care of her cats. So we have to understand the importance of choosing these Venusian relationships correctly and realize we cannot choose them correctly if we don't recognize who we are. If I hadn't discovered who I was when she had asked me those questions, asked me to be her roommate, wow, the trouble I would have got into, you know? A lot of trouble, all right? But I recognized it. So you need to recognize that if you haven't discovered your son, you're not in a place yet to have commitments in your life. And that's okay. Because that means you have no commitments restricting you. Step away from all your commitments. Is I have one commitment only, is to find who I am. And then I'll look at all the opportunities and see if they're useful to me, and I'm useful for them. And if they are, and they feel good, then I'll choose that as a commitment of love, of sustainable Venusian love. Okay? And while we're going through this adventure, we're going to get so many other opportunities for love. Because we're going to have the love of Mars and Moon and all these other great planets. But this is the love, sustainable, committed love, based on the recognition of who we are, which means based on discovering what is the foundation of our own self-love. How do I live with myself? Wow, if I wrote my autobiography, you'd ask yourself, how do you live with yourself? How do I live with myself easy? It's not even hard. It's easy to live with myself because I recognize a couple things about myself. And recognizing that those are part of who I truly am helps me survive living with all the stories of my life. You know, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so we need that sun as our foundation for our own ability to live for ourselves. It's the foundation of our self-love. Okay, yeah, I messed up, but I was an astrologer. Wow. Okay. What carries more weight? Well, when we're doing what we really are, that always carries more weight. And what that is can be such a simple thing, and it can be a big thing. It can be a person who cleans the bathrooms. It could be the president. We are trained to think one's better than the other. It's not. The one you are is the better one. You know? It's some of the beautiful stories are about the simple, unimportant people who somehow make a difference in other people's lives. Why are they able to make that difference? Because they're being who they really are. And if we're being who we really are, we make a difference all the time. You know? Because it's the foundation of living a life that's of love, instead of a life that's of anything else. And nothing else is desirable, nothing else is worth living. Okay? Alright, that video is longer than I thought. The importance of the sun, I can't underestimate it. So you can really begin to understand just how important it is to be ourselves in the context of our lives and the commitments we make. And really, this is such an important thing that so many of us struggle with, that I am going to have a separate video next where I'm going to give you some guidelines for discovering and getting in touch with who you really are, because that's the foundation. Your life is about you. It has to be about the you that really does exist.